First of all, let me see if I can. I want to try to explain because I've seen a lot of what I think is misinformation out there. People saying this is excluding all of the DNA evidence. That is absolutely based on my interpretation, not what this is saying. Okay, here's what I think is going on. They are excluding the genealogy, which is exactly what it says. The genealogy tests and reports. Okay, so what they did, they had DNA from a knife sheath. Idaho couldn't pull a profile off of it. They sent it over to a third party. I can't remember what they're called now, Orthram Labs or something like that.
The one in Texas.
They use a different methodology. They're able to pull profiles from smaller amounts of DNA, which was actually speculation up until this document came out. I believe it was back in January or February. Someone, basically a leak came out from someone who's close to the investigation, saying that they had to send the DNA off to a third party to get it analyzed and pull a profile of it. Anyway, that's been reported on, but that was technically speculation based on a leaked source up until this document. This document basically confirms that now. So anyway, back to what I was saying. I think they got the DNA. They sent it off to this third party. They get the DNA profile. They were already suspecting Kohberger. Kohberger was already their number one suspect based on the vehicle, the pings. They found him at Washington State, found out he drives the Elantra, the front license plate, all that stuff we've been talking about. I think they already had him on their radar. So they confirmed their suspicion by doing this genealogy report. Okay, so basically they already have their DNA profile. Now they're comparing that DNA profile against databases. Think 23andMe. People send in their DNA all the time to these, and there's several companies that do it that cooperate with law enforcement. I know 23andMe is one of them for sure. Yeah. So now they have basically public databases, maybe not public, I don't know if that's the right word for it, or private databases to compare this DNA profile with. So they build a family tree from that. They find close relatives to their suspect, and they narrowed it down to Bryan Kohberger's family, right? That no tests were involved in that genealogy research. No, like actual scientific testing. They already had the profile.
Yeah.
They just went and compared it to these databases that are collected through
until
these
they found a match with family
companies. And then they narrow it down, and they basically used it to confirm their suspicions. They didn't use it to. It's not mentioned in the PCA. It wasn't used to complete the arrest. What they did use was so after they do that, they go and they raid the trash at the Kohberger residence, and they weren't lucky enough to get Bryan Kohberger's DNA. They got the father's DNA, so they used that to connect, and it says 99.99% that this is the father of the suspect. That is the part they use in the PCA. That is the part that they use that they mention everywhere. They never even mention the genealogy report. Yeah. So now they're saying it's actually not relevant. It's not relevant to the case at all. Which, I mean, and they may be onto something, and we're going to get into the laws here in a second. But in my personal opinion, Bryan Kohberger deserves to have, and the defense deserves to have, every bit of information 100%, that they use.
Dude.
And then any genetic genealogy research is exempt from this part. Is super interesting, guys. Any genetic genealogy research is exempt from disclosure under ICR 16G2. So go look at ICR 16G2. This is the part where it gets a little weird, but I actually think I might have figured it out.
16G2, informants. So disclosure must not be required of an informant's identity unless the informant is to be produced as a witness at a hearing or trial, subject to any protective order or subsection L of this rule. Is it L? I think it's L of this rule, or a disclosure under subsection B6 of this rule. So they're saying they're denying it because of informants. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? It turns out if they build a genetic tree, family tree from this research, the people that they link to Kohberger are considered genetic informants.
So it actually does make sense.
Yeah.
So it actually seems like they may actually be allowed to exclude this.
Because we'd heard about informants early on, and we're like, what the hell? Because it's just when I hear the word informants, I'm not thinking of anything like that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, that's super interesting.
But the thing is, I mean, they have these people. Like, let's say they connected him to a cousin, and that's how they basically confirmed their suspicion. Well, they have the cousin's name. They've got information on the cousin. Under this rule, the identity needs to remain hidden unless they're being called as a witness, right? I mean, I don't know how they provide the report if they don't provide the names.
Yeah.
And the father does not fall under this. I just want to make that very clear.
That's actually was what I was going to ask.
The father doesn't fall under this what they're talking about here. The father, I believe, the father's DNA and that analysis and that testing, I believe that has actually been handed over to the defense. I think they have that. I think that's included in the stuff that they said they've handed over in terms of lab results and things like that. They are specifically talking about the part where they took a DNA profile, which came from the knife. The knife.
Oh, okay, the sheath, yeah.
So they've taken that profile, they've built a family tree to basically narrow or confirm their suspicions, and that's where it ends.
Yeah, that's what they took out the gate to the company.
That's all they're talking about here. That's all they're referencing in this part of the document. People are thinking they're throwing out DNA evidence altogether. People are thinking they're throwing out the knife sheath altogether. That is not what's happening. They're literally only talking about this very small piece of the puzzle. They're being very specific with their wording. And then they also reference IRE 509. This one's also pretty important. Rule of privilege. The United States or a state or subdivision thereof has a privilege to refuse to disclose the identity of a person who is furnished information relating to or assisting in an investigation of a possible violation of a law to a law enforcement officer or member of a legislative committee or its staff conducting an investigation. Who may claim. The privilege may be claimed by an appropriate representative of the public entity to which the information was furnished. This is the connection they made. This is the cousin or uncle they found, or whatever it may have been that confirmed their suspicions that it was Bryan Kohberger. Exceptions: voluntary disclosure. So if you volunteer to disclose the information, informer as a witness. If an informer appears as a witness, they mentioned that they're not going to be calling witnesses from this genealogy research. Testimony on relevant issue. If it appears in the case that an informer may be able to give testimony relevant to the issue or the criminal case, that's not going to be the case either. This is just a random family member. So all of this is starting to make sense now. Scroll down some more. We don't need all that 3. Keep going. Is there a 4? We're good on that one.
Yeah.
But then they reference some of these other ones, like they call it a waste of time. Yeah, this was actually interesting. The court may exclude relevant evidence if its probative value is substantially outweighed by danger of one or more of the following: unfair prejudice, confusing the issues, misleading the jury, undue delay, wasting time, or needlessly presenting cumulative evidence.
Makes a lot of sense.
Guys, I mean, they actually may get away with this. Again, I want to make it clear. I think Kohberger deserves to have every piece of information that they used.
100%, dude.